Welcome to another edition of the It's Cavalier podcast. It's your boy Mack, and tonight I am joined by Mr. Underscore Nikki G of Cavs Nation. How you doing, my man?
Doing great, man. It could be better. Actually, could be a lot better.
I mean, yeah. I assume that we could both be doing a hell of a lot fucking better after tonight's game. Obviously, if you are watching this live, we are referring to Cleveland's contest between themselves and the New York Knicks. Now, this is the third time this year that this team has taken on the Knicks, and what could be the final time with any potential additional matchup having to occur in the postseason. And with the way the two are currently seated, assuming the Cavs are able to stop themselves from falling down the standings, that may not happen until the second round. That said, they had the opportunity to come away with the series win tonight, and obviously they did not. They lost to the Knicks by the score of 107-98 and sending fans into a collective frenzy in the process. It was brutal, man. And as we were talking about before we went live here, like as a fan of basketball, I suppose there were things that you could really enjoy from tonight's game if you're not a fan of the Cavaliers. Josh Hart's, obliteration of Cleveland on the boards, as well as Dante DiVincenzo stepping up when some unfortunate injury news occurred for the Knicks. But man, it's all around. This is just a frustrating loss. Let me just ask you this: what were your initial thoughts, like your first takeaway as soon as this game, the clock hit zero?
Yeah, you said it. As a basketball fan, it was kind of cool. The big ragu, Dante putting up 28, Josh Hart grabbing 19 rebounds. It's cool to see a team without their four best players do something like this. The worst part about this was that there was not much you can take from this and say that was progress or that looked good or that was something we can take into the next last 20 games here and really build off of. This really kind of felt like a forced reset button for us, where it just seemed like mentally we had to look at ourselves. It's back to the drawing board, and it's not a time where we want to be at the drawing board.
I mean, no, this is not the point in time where you want to have a loss like this. We knew heading into the latter half of the season that there were a few of these on the schedule. Obviously, we were hoping that we would have both Karis LeVert and Donovan Mitchell available, both of which missed the game, which did open the door for Craig Porter Jr. and Sam Merrill, who was a bright spot for the Cavaliers. If on a night that is kind of absent of them, Merrill was definitely the one bright spot out there. And just seeing the way that this team responded, it was really disheartening, man. It really was. It's like we of all people, fans of this team, know exactly what it's like to see a team gutted by injuries and still prevail or find a way to succeed despite that. Hell, they did that this season for a large stretch without Evan Mobley and Darius Garland healthy. When you saw players like Dean Wade and the aforementioned Merrill step up and really just step into the roles and be elite at them. So it sucked to see Cleveland kind of trending towards the other direction here. It almost is like that injury galvanized New York while kind of I don't know, deflating the Cavs. I don't know if I'm the only person that felt that way, but just 47 seconds into the game, seeing Jalen Brunson get injured like that, am I crazy for believing that deflated the Cavs even a little bit, or that changed the entire tone of the game? I don't know, but
Honestly, it's been like this for over a year. It's been like this where there's this moment whenever the Cavs and the Knicks face, and the Knicks
Mhm.
seem to always rise to the moment, and then the Cavs, for some reason, they don't play up to their potential in these moments. Especially when the opportunity's there, it feels like it pulls away from us a little bit. Um, that's what was a little bit frustrating because JB has kind of shown a lot of moments where, compared to last season, when we lost to the Knicks in 5 and we forced a
Mhm.
lot of double big because that's kind of what we had. That was our go-to. It feels weird to see him do it again today, especially when lately he's been doing a lot of mixing. He's been like staggering
Dean
Mobley now
Wade.
and even into the fourth. And then today he went back to full double big with the Okoro, and you just saw the same rebounding issues, the same like defensive scheme that worked in some ways, but offensively, trepidatious, rebounding, weak. It just seemed like JB takes certain steps forward, and then the moments when you really want to take that next step forward, he takes a step back. So it was it kind of leaves us a little bit of nowhere right now. I'll be honest.
Yeah, I mean, Mobley, for what it's worth, did finish with a double-double tonight, 13 points, 13 rebounds. He did his part, I'd like to say, but what's going on with Jarrett Allen? Jarrett Allen is just not pulling down as many rebounds as he had been to begin this season. I really want to know, are you seeing anything from that five-man spot that worries you just a little bit? Is it just the fact that Mobley is now back in the lineup, so now they're trying to figure out this too big thing once more? Because, as you know, they were able to stagger the minutes last year. They did that a lot, but this season with Dean Wade kind of being fully healthy and really shooting that ball really well, and then the addition of George Niang, who we'll talk about here in a little bit, they have been staggering their minutes even more this season. But why do you think
Yeah.
that Jared all of a sudden seemed to kind of be a non-factor?
I think this is what we talk about the Knicks being a bad matchup for us. This is kind of
Mhm.
the reason why the Knicks do this to a lot of teams. They're a bruising team. They're good at forcing offensive rebounds because of the way they attack guards, of the way they defend. We are especially when we go double big, we're a big drop coverage team. We're a team that
Mhm.
really our bigs help our guards. Like that's how it really works. And that, when you blitz their guards, even if it's McBride for 47 minutes, or even if it's
Yeah.
Dante on a heater, the way we play defense, it moves our bigs. And, guys like Hartenstein and even Achua today, they feast on that. They feast on getting rebounds off that. And so that was one of the reasons why sometimes if you're if you see the clear advantage a team has on the glass, JB has a tendency to love size. I think we're going to talk about George Niang. I feel like one of the underrated reasons why he loves George Niang is the size factor. I think he thinks about if you put Dean Wade instead of Niang, sometimes he's worried about the rebounding even more than. But we've seen that necessarily that doesn't equate. Adding size or adding defense doesn't necessarily solve the whole problem, because now you've got new issues. You add Okoro into the mix, it stagnates the offense. You add George Niang to the mix, sometimes it can it won't lead to the rebounding effect that you want. So I just think it's a bad matchup for us. And some of our comfort picks, like the double big and
Mhm.
certain players we like to play, it's not a good matchup for the Knicks. So these are the moments you want JB to not go back to some lineups that hadn't worked in the past. And also just moments you want more toughness. Like you're right, Allen, you would like to see just a little more heart. You'd like to see, just a little bit more. I definitely think that's something you expected from today when you're like, what are we, 8 games since the playoff series against the Knicks? So,
I mean, I'm flabbergasted because we know what Allen is capable of, and for much of this season, he has been on like a redemption tour. I actually felt that he should have been in heavy consideration for one of the replacement spots in the All-Star game, and
yeah.
really since All-Star break has ended and they've come back, I just felt like we haven't seen that same intensity from him. I think a lot of that does have to do with the inclusion of Evan Mobley and having Darius Garland back out there, and the Cavs having to face yet another adjustment, which was, it was obvious it was going to happen when you're integrating two of your best players back into the mix. But I don't know, in a matchup like this, that clearly, as I was saying before we went live here, like, although there were definitely numerous starters missing tonight, that didn't matter. Like, this game still carried some weight to it. I know I'm not alone in that. I know you feel that way, and I know our fan base feels that way, is that no matter who stepped out onto that court tonight for either squad, this meant something. This absolutely meant something to this fan base. And to see them go out there and just get absolutely obliterated on the boards, and just to have a lackluster performance in terms of effort at certain points. Although I will say there was some crazy shot making on New York's part at some instances in this game. But to see this team get beat the way that it did tonight, it sucked. And I'll say this. I came into tonight understanding that this was really never going to be, it was a no-win situation. It was a lose-lose situation for Cleveland, because if you win the game, you don't gain anything. They're outside of the standings, outside of saying, hey, we're keeping pace in the East and we're not dropping further down the standings. But outside of that, there really wasn't too much to gain, because if you win and you blow them out, the media would have just said, "Oh, you beat a Julius Randle, Jalen Brunson list New York Knicks team. So what, do you want a
Right.
cookie?" And if you lose, obviously we did. the media is going to tear us apart, and so is the fan base. And honestly, after a loss like tonight, it's some of it is justified. So I get it,
Yeah.
but I just came into tonight
Like,
with that mindset. I'm curious to see how you felt though.
no, I get, the noise sucks. The noise sucks. There's a lot of noise. And a lot of it's distracting. And honestly, I just think you try to ignore it a little bit. You try to just look at the progress and kind of like what you're trying to do. Um, the Cavs never really get any favoritism from the media anyways.
Oh,
It's just
sure.
kind of the way it is. Um, yeah, I thought not only did you not see the Cavs step up when you wanted them against the Knicks, the bigger thing is you didn't see the Cavs step up without Mitchell. It's one of those things. It's like there's this toughness, there's this leadership thing. I think one of the strongest arguments for why Donovan deserves to be in this MVP ladder is the fact that he
Absolutely.
leads. It's the fact that like his demeanor, the way he plays, it's contagious to his teammates. Without it, we really lose our identity sometimes. And it can be kind of scary because like a game today, he's missed 4 of the last 7 since the All-Star. It's just without him, it feels like a different team. And so when he's sitting there on the bench watching this team, he knows how important he is to it, and he knows how much he wants to be there for it. But at the same time, you're evaluating guys like Darius Garland. You're looking at Evan Mobley, and you have a decision this summer, and you have to say, can I extend and play with this guy for 3, 4, 5 years? And can I really believe in this guy and believe in this team and win with this team? It's not like today was that day to prove that. It's not. April is going to be the time to prove that. But,
Absolutely.
you know, it's you wonder how it's going to build into April and what this does. Does it propel us forward, or is it going to be a sign of a potential future pitfall? We hope these last 20 games we figure that out.
I mean, that's essentially where I'm at from a big picture standpoint. It's just when you get to a game like this that clearly, it's not necessarily a barometer because again, they are missing considerable amount of talent over there. So, you whoop their ass and there's not really too much to gain outside of a win. You lose and you're a laughing stock again. And then
Yeah,
on
the
to the
sky's
next
falling
game.
right now.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
that's exactly the general consensus on social media, obviously, but we know that not to be the case. And really from a top down perspective, there's not anything that this Cavs team could do during the regular season to prove to people that they are legit. It's going to have to occur, as you said, in April, in May, if they make it that far. Um, it's going to be then when we can really start having some of these conversations about how far this team could advance, what this core is, what the ceiling of this current core is. Those are not conversations that can be addressed in the regular season. However, they do give you confidence, right? Tonight's game would have gone a long way, even though they were missing some talent over there. Also, we were too. It still would have been a confidence boost considering how the Cavs have opened up this second half of the season. So it just sucks,
Yeah.
man. But I will stop harping on all of the bad tonight. Let's talk about a little bit of the good. Sam Merrill, he's been phenomenal this season, man. And the one true issue with Merrill has been finding him minutes. And it's
Yeah.
maddening to me because at full strength, you're talking about Donovan, you're talking about Darius, Max, Isaac, Karras. You could, there's a couple other guys you could throw in there that he could potentially steal minutes from as well. But when this team is fully healthy, when you have one of the best shooters in the NBA not seeing the floor, some would say that's a problem, and some would say that's
Yeah.
on JB, right? So I guess
Yeah.
my question for you is how do you solve this issue? Is it as simple as just playing Merrill when other guys are off? Is it as simple as saying, I don't give a fuck what happens during the course of a game? Sam Merrill needs his fair allotment of minutes. What is the right answer to getting Merrill minutes? Because clearly he can impact the game.
Yeah. Well, quick reference here. Sam Merrill today actually played 29 minutes. Dean Wade put up 20 minutes, and George Niang had 16 minutes. I know a lot of fans are saying that 16 minutes too many for George Niang, but compared to even just
Yeah,
a few games
they're eating
ago,
him alive right
it's
now.
yeah, yes. I hope he's not checking Twitter, otherwise, or Donovan might have to defend him soon on Twitter or something. But I mean, this is different. Like, this is clearly like a different distribution than he's done in his past couple weeks. He is experimenting with more Sam today. you still drop this game against an undermanned Knicks team, even with Sam. You saw the trade-offs. Like they attack George Niang on defense too. Today they attacked Sam a lot. But Sam actually held up pretty well. I thought he did pretty good on defense. Like he definitely was like, outplaying the negatives. The way he was shooting the ball, he led us in scoring. And you just need the threat, because that's a threat that the Knicks, never really have to worry about. There was a time in the third quarter today where Isaac Okoro had 5 really good looks from 3. Just threes that he'd been making all season, right? Even if he misses 1 or 2, he'll come back and hit the next 1 or 2. Missed 5 in a row. And I feel like that was like the moment where there was a little bit of a shake again. There was a little bit of nightmares back to last April. There was just a little bit of just like, oh God, it's that thing again. And, that was when JB kind of came back and put back Sam Merrill. The question now is like, should we be doing this ahead of time? Should we go into this game with the strategy instead of reacting to it and always playing this catch-up style of thing? And like you said, it's a situation where we have a lot of lemons and we're trying to make lemonade out of it. But it's a lot of good lemons. Like, I think if George Niang is like your 10th best player, George Niang, a career 40% three-point shooter, has more playoff experience than about our entire roster almost combined, other than Donovan. Like, that's like, I understand why JB sometimes go to him as a comfort pick. You saw at the end of the fourth quarter today, Sam, 4 minutes, 53 seconds left. Sam's on a heater. JB pulls him out. He pulls him out, so he puts in Mack, Strus, and Evan Mobley. 2 guys who Mobley had a decent game. Strus had a not so great games, but both guys in general were struggling against the Knicks. And so you would think, oh wow, JB's going back to a habit here. He's going back to Mobley. He's going back to double big. He trusts Strus because he trusts the experience. Should he be trusting Sam more? So I think what's worth experimenting, JB has recently started to give young guys more unproven guys as in Wade and Merrill. These guys aren't guys who've made playoff runs before. They're not, year over year showing you results. So I think that's why he has tended to support the Niang and Levert minutes. But I think now he's going to be more situational about it. Like today he kind of was. Today he did put more Merrill minutes. Now he's going to go into more game plans, more prepared to get there earlier, or at least he should. He should get to a point where he's ready to make those adjustments earlier in a game. Give these guys, if you need to flip the minutes to more Sam and Wade, then you probably should. I guess that's the balance he has to do. See what combinations work like that, and if it's a game where Strus or Mobley or Levert are really struggling, you have to have the confidence to flip the switch and give your guys a different look.
And see that this is the thing with me. Like I find myself wondering, does he need to be included in the rotation, or are his minutes purely situational? Obviously,
Right.
tonight with Donovan being out, with Karras being out, there's a clear path to minutes for him. Same with Craig Porter Jr. But when those guys are back and we're at near full strength, and I don't even include Ty Jerome in that conversation anymore, which is crazy. But when the Cavs are back at full strength, is he just a situationally dependent player? Honestly, I find it really fucking hard to sit him, because the man is shooting 43+% from 3-point distance. I believe he has now drilled his 103 of the season, which is crazy considering the amount of minutes that he has played and the amount of games that he has appeared in. He is a flamethrower of the highest accord, but he plays for a team that obviously is pretty stacked at the guard position. And I know one of the candidates for him to steal minutes from is Levert, and Strus, but I just don't know what the correct path to solving this situation is, or if there even really is one, because it's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation with JB, because somebody's always going to be the odd man out. Somebody deserving of minutes is always going to be sitting. And that's kind of just the nature of the beast in terms of the rotation at times, especially when the playoffs commence. But it does suck to see such an asset who can shoot the ball so well just getting so few minutes, and it is frustrating at times. I guess I'm ranting here just to say I get it, but it's
Yeah,
frustrating nonetheless.
it is. It is. And I think maybe don't overthink it at some point. Like, I think at some point, if you're right, if the proof is right there, if it's
Mhm.
that obvious that you need to play Sam, then you're right. I think you do need to find minutes and give him a consistent role and see what he does with it. Um, I think a big reason why, I mean, it goes back to this whole Niang debate, right? Like, why does George Niang get 16 minutes in a game? Like, why does he get so much more playing time than Dean
Do you
Wade?
want my answer on that for real? I believe some of that is because obviously you kind of hinted to it, to a degree. It's one, he's trusted. He's a trusted
Right.
veteran, right? He's a trusted vet. He is coming off of 5 straight seasons in which he has drilled 40% or better from 3-point distance. And so the one thing that he does have working for him is that he does play the power forward position. He
Right.
is a he is he doesn't have the prototypical body for a power forward, but he can give you viable minutes at that power forward position. And when he's on, he can legitimately be a floor spacer out there. But when he is off, it can be god awful.
Yeah.
And that's in addition to the defensive concerns, right? And so that's why you see JB kind of leveraging his and Wade's minutes at certain points where we know Wade is a little bit more flexible in terms of his versatility in regards to positioning, because he can play the 3, the 4, and he can give you spot minutes at the 5 even in certain lineups. But for Niang, I feel like the reason why he is getting those minutes is because JB, for one, he's a veteran, and JB rarely trusts young talent,
Right.
unproven talent, like you said,
Very
and
obvious. Yeah.
and two, he is a power forward, and he is one of the only bigs on the floor that can space. And so I get why he's getting the minutes, but I feel like they can be adjusted as needed.
There's one more aspect, a little wrinkle to George Niang's game that I also think is a little bit underrated.
Mhm.
What one thing that Dean Wade doesn't do that George does really well is imagine the drive and kick offense and eventually it gets to George versus it gets to Dean Wade. When a defense catches that rotation, they get to Wade, usually the offense stops. Usually Wade's ability to attack a closeout is one of the
Mhm.
weaker on the teams. George has actually shown the ability to put the ball on the ground, get to the rim, finish around the rim, make the next pass. There's a continuity. There's like kind of a little bit of a higher sense of IQ, I think, from George Niang that I think JB trusts. Um, Overall, though, I don't know if we're getting enough out of it. I watched George Niang's minutes today. I know we want to overreact. I know we want to look at the stat line. I know probably the answer here is to decrease the minutes. But
Uh-huh.
if you just look at it possession by possession, there was some decent looks. Like there were some times where he was able to get down to the rim and do a kick out. There were times when you saw him do certain things that Dean Wade couldn't do. And I think that's one thing that gives me a positive outlook on Sam Merrill. He's more than just a shooter. This guy is
Absolutely.
really good at moving up the ball, hitting bigs on the pocket pass, doing the next swing. He gets the team aspect of this. So I think you could actually fit him into a normal rotation and he be productive and him contribute to the flow. I think that's a big reason why JB trusts George over Dean Wade sometimes a little bit more, just
Mhm.
because of his ability to continue the flow of the drive and kick offense. But George has struggled to produce sometimes. So maybe you let the vet be a vet who can come off the bench in situational moments and you trust the lineups that work well together.
I think those are valid points. There are times throughout these games this season where I see George driving and I'm like, "Oh my god, this is the slowest drive to the basket that I've ever seen
Yeah.
in my life," and it's befitting the minivan nickname, and he makes the shot. It's frustrating as
Yeah.
hell, and he is also fully capable. He does have enough vision to kick out there. That is something that he does have a leg up on in terms of Dean Wade. But
And
your
he's got a
point on
mouth on him. He
he's
talks.
gritty, he's
He's gritty.
tough.
Yeah.
He will let you know that he ain't gonna take no shit, and so
Right.
I love that toughness that he brings to the table when the Cavs are trying to beat soft allegations. It is important. Make no mistake, that is important to have a guy that can not only be your enforcer, but can give you minutes too.
Right.
But your point about Merrill is spot on because it's not just shooting. His mere movement generates gravity unto itself. There are many possessions that he's out there at which the opposing defense is scrambling to navigate around screens to catch up to him. There was one possession that stands out in particular in regards to his minutes tonight. It was one in which Darius Garland used an off-ball screen from Merrill to drive to the basket and find Jarrett Allen for a pretty. It was contested, but it was a fairly makeable shot, and he made it. It's little things like that that Merrill understands. As you said, the team aspect of basketball, moving without the ball in your hands and finding ways to be impactful and finding ways to generate guys' looks. Because as we often like to think of gravity as how much spacing a guy can provide to a team and how much gravity a guy generates simply by having them by being out there and teams having to pay attention to him. But the other part to that is literally being able to generate gravity for others. being able to open up the lanes for the ball handlers, being able to pull the defense's attention away from one of your teammates so that they have a solid look. And Sam Merrill, you can clearly tell that that happens when he's out there. And I feel like if Sam was just a little bit taller, he would be a lock to be in this rotation, because I feel
No,
like
100%.
yeah. Defensively, he holds up. His screen navigation out there is better than I initially thought. He's not getting beat too badly in the pick and roll. There are some teams that are built to kind of take advantage of that. We saw that happen against the Clippers earlier this season, where
Yeah.
you have a little bit more of an athletic wing out there that can kind of hunt Sam out there, but it's not going to be every game. I know we've kind of harped on the Sam talk for a long time here, but I'll close out of it by saying this. If there is ever a guy on this team that deserves consistent run, it is that man. He's
Yeah,
really connected.
100%. I'll ask you one last question about it.
Sure.
If Kyle Korver was on our bench right now, would you give him minutes over George Niang? The answer is probably yes. And I'll just say this. Kyle Korver, in his 4th year in the NBA, shot 43% from the three-point line. Sam Merrill, this is his 4th year in the NBA, his emerging season. He is right now shooting 43.5%. So, I mean, you see the movement without the ball. You see the
Mhm.
instant impact he has on the game. Defensively, you're right. He's not as bad as you think. And just like on offense, he's able to add to the flow and buy into the team aspect. Same thing on defense. You rarely see him miss a rotation. You see him hustle on closeouts. He is somebody who can fit. And I think, you wouldn't bench Kyle Korver this long. So I think you have to do the same thing for Sam.
Yeah, I think one of the things that people have to understand as well is that this team is just deep. And I try and tell myself that all the time. Like, hey, there is a number of guys that deserve run that are not getting it. But there are other aspects of this game that. Oh, thanks for that update. B Skrills says Jalen Brunson X-rays came back negative. Good for them. Yeah, I was really pulling
Awesome.
for that. As much as I hate the Knicks, I am a huge fan of Jalen Brunson. That guy, he continues to prove a lot of his doubters wrong, and
Dog.
he plays a pretty fun brand of basketball. We know how capable he is. So I'm glad to hear that he is not truly going to miss too much time. I do want to ask you though, Darius
Yeah.
Garland.
Yeah.
In a
Yeah.
night where you don't have Donovan Mitchell, which has kind of it's become more and more common for Donovan to miss some time ahead of these playoffs. And if that's what it takes to get his body right, I'm okay with that. We know we know that he's had the illness. We know that he's had some soreness out there as well. So I do want them to play it cautiously with him. But one of the things that you said earlier that, is quite honestly very, very true is that he basically, he is really the punch. He is really, really the number one option out there and the guy that generates so much for this team. And on a night where you need Darius Garland to kind of take it upon himself to motivate these guys to up their games, I just didn't feel like we got that from him. 19 points, 4 rebounds, 5 assists, 7 of 14 on the night. Sounds okay, but it felt pretty quiet. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on Darius Garland's performance tonight.
I think the thing that was the most frustrating part about hearing all the Darius Garland slander over the last few weeks is I think fans sometimes forget how hard it is to be a number one option in the NBA. I
Mhm.
think people don't realize how hard this is. Like when you're a number one option in the NBA, you are getting guarded by the best player. You are facing the most double teams. You are running into bigs and getting pounded constantly. There are 400 some players in the NBA, and every team, 30 teams, have one number one options, and a lot of them aren't as good as the upper half of them. So it's a hard job. Donovan Mitchell this year has proven that he is, maybe we have to see it in the playoffs, but in terms of an engine, in terms of a number one option who can create and win you games and raise everybody's level of play, he has proven it this year that he's capable of doing that. Darius used to have that role. Back in 2021, when we lost Sexton and we made our play-in run, that was Darius's role. And he was the reason why we made the play-in. He was as valuable as they come in terms of point guards that season. And he had that role in 2022. So he comes back in 2024. He's coming off of a jaw injury and surgery that took 14 pounds of muscle off his body. that, or whatever pounds he lost. And, and you have to come back and not only adjust to playing again, but now you have to adjust to playing in a number one role, a role that this entire team is humming off of Donovan Mitchell for 6 straight weeks. That's not easy. That's not easy on top of the fact that you are the number one target for offenses to attack when you're defending. So I just think there was just a lack of circumstance that people really realized with Darius, like coming back from injury, sliding to a hard role, dealing with everything he had to deal with. Today, I thought overall it was a clean game from him. I didn't see too many mistakes. I thought the Pistons game and the Chicago game before that, you saw some light for him. You saw some confidence. You saw a simplicity to his game. Like he just like wasn't. He was being a little bit more decisive with it, a little bit more snappy with it, and we love that from Darius. And today, yeah, you wish you saw more of it. But just a reminder, the Knicks are winning games without their stars over the past few weeks. Whatever wins they are getting, they're getting because they know how to take number one options out of games, and they know how to get physical with you and make it hard. In terms of the leadership, in terms of what Donovan provides besides the basketball, I think that, yeah, Darius has, we're not seeing it from him as much, which is why I think you really would like to see it from a guy like JB Bickerstaff. I think that's where that's where it has to kind of come from a little bit. If it's not going to come from Darius and it's not going to come from Mobley, guy's a
young guy,
cute giant. It's not going to come from, so if it's not going to come from Darius, then it has to come from coaching. It has to be a buy-in for the team. But it really just shows that Donovan's job is not something that Darius can always easily slide into.
I think that is a fair sentiment. I think I find myself at sometimes I have been a pretty staunch defender of Darius Garland, pretty much for his entire career. That All-Star season that he had, it was phenomenal. And you are correct; he was the engine that allowed them to get to that play-in tournament. And had they not sustained the number of injuries they did that year, they would probably have been a high seed in the playoffs, in my opinion. But this year, coming off of some of the injuries that he's had, especially the jaw injury that caused him to miss so much time, and having to mentally adjust to playing, to moving from second fiddle to bona fide number one option without Donovan out there, that does play a role. I just wish he would be a little bit more aggressive at times. It's like I watched today's game and a couple of previous games with Tyrese Maxey out there, and I'm thinking, man, Tyrese is as aggressive as they come. He plays at, this isn't necessarily true, I will say, but the way that I envisioned it today was he plays at 100%, like one speed all the time. Obviously, he's quick twitch. He knows how to be shifty and whatnot, but he is just so damn aggressive out there. And we've seen that from Darius in the past. I just want him to be able to flip that proverbial switch the same way that we have seen Donovan do it all season long. And I think that has been the biggest separating factor between these two guys, is that Donovan has quickly become one of the game's best combo guards this season without Darius Garland most of the time out there. If he knows, if the situation calls for him to play make and get guys involved, he can do that. But he can also go out there and get you a damn bucket and be aggressive when it's necessary. And I feel like that is what's missing from Darius Garland at this point in time. And I don't know if that's something that you can teach. I don't know if that's a mentality thing that Darius has to grow into.
He's 24 years old.
Yeah. It is still very possible. And, but that is the difference between these two. Like one of the biggest differences, not the only difference, but the biggest one, in my opinion. But you did bring up one individual who I have to discuss, because a lot of people have their opinion on him one way or another, sometimes good, most of the time bad. And that is JB Bickerstaff.
Let's do it. Let's get into it. Let's talk about it.
I gotta ask you, because people accuse me all to live on day of being a JB apologist, and I'm just like, man, just give the guy give him to the rest of the season. If you're gonna can him, if he has a poor playoff showing, yes, fire him. That's probably the best direction that they could go in. If they get swept or they have just another piss poor playoff showing, I can acknowledge that. But I do have to ask you, where are you at with JB Bickerstaff right now? Is he the man for the job right now, or do you feel like they should have cut bait?
Let me just say this to all the people who give shit to Mack on Twitter: be nicer. I think there's a bigger picture here. This goes beyond coaching. This is like a lot of things need to come together for things to work right. And I know it comes down to the coach. Here's what I'll say about JB. I wouldn't say I'm a JB truther, but I will say I've been very patient with him. I think there were circumstances that we should really pay attention to. Last year, I think there were big limitations on the personnel. Before this season, there were a lot of Cavs fans who thought Dean Wade shouldn't even be on the roster. There were a lot of
Yeah.
Cavs fans, those same Cavs fans who complained to you about JB Bickerstaff. These are the same fans who said that Emoni Bates should have Dean Wade's minutes. And now we here we are, 3/4 of the way through the season, and now we're talking about Wade should have 25 plus minutes over George Niang. Like, things change in Twitter. So, but JB is the one constant. It's the one constant that we hear about. I treat him like a player. I think a player can come in and do a lot of the right things, go in with the right game plan, and sometimes not execute, or sometimes the shots don't fall, and sometimes just the mistakes will happen. I think JB has a philosophy about basketball. I think it's not a fluke that he developed one of the best defenses in the league. I think he has an understanding and a connection and ability to develop players. I think we've seen that now multiple times. Like guys like Craig, guys like Sam Merrill, guys like even Allen has developed more. Admirable to be a Garland defender even through some of the early years when there were reporters who were calling him statistically one of the worst players in the
worst
NBA.
player in the
Yeah.
NBA. Yes.
So the worst. Yeah. So there are some undeniable benefits to what JB has done to this organization. And honestly, from my standpoint, we've seen franchises with the rotating door of coaches. We've seen franchises who fire championship level coaches. We did it. We fired Ty Lue not too long after he brought a championship. It happens. The coach is the first to blame. But I think as an organization, as a cultural standpoint, it's important to not cut bait when you're developing, when you're growing. It's really important to look at a first playoff series and to not overreact to it and understand the benefits of continuity and
Continuity is
chemistry.
important. Yes.
Yeah. And I think you basically said it, you framed the question like this. Can JB get the job done? And I think where we disagree on is what that job is. I think Cavs fans want to win the championship now. And I'm not going to lie to you. With the injuries that are happening in the East, with the potential that we've shown, I can understand why you want it. And I can understand why you think there's a path that's worth pursuing now. I get that. But in terms of what the Cavs are thinking, in terms of what Donovan Mitchell's thinking, in terms of what our priorities are, I think it makes sense to give them this last shot. To show that you're giving people who have gotten you here that belief, and allowing JB to learn from his mistakes and grow. I think today was an example where it shows it felt like he didn't, but there are days where it feels like he does. There's times when he makes judgment calls and they work. So come playoff time, it's on him, like you said. If how we play, is it convincing? And if not, he will be the first to go. We all know this. But the job is not to win necessarily a championship. The job is to prove that this can work, that Mobley and Garland and Allen and Mitchell and shooters and defenders and the identity that you formed, it can work. It can become something one day that's worth Donovan extending into. So overall, I think JB, his biggest challenge is going to be, he has certain biases. He loves size. He loves defense. He changes his rotations based off those things. Can he have the courage to switch it up when it matters? Can he, when you have to trust your offense, when you're getting out-rebounded anyways and outsized anyways, can you switch up your play style just like when Mobley and Garland went down on December 15th? Can you buy into a new identity when you need to? That's what it's going to come down to for him. But I give him the benefit of the doubt until it's too late.
That's essentially where I'm at. And I feel like people think that I'm just out here, I love the guy no matter what. No, that's not the case. The case is this. He has definitely warranted being here through this season. There has been a consistent level of growth, at least through the regular season. There has been a progression. I don't think people understand the state of the Cavaliers when they were handed over to JB Bickerstaff. Yeah. And I get it's not all been JB, right? The addition of some of this wonderful talent that we have seen come through these doors at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse, that has a lot to do with it. Right. Yep. Adding a defensive monster like Evan Mobley to the equation really changed things from a defensive standpoint. Adding a superstar in Donovan Mitchell really elevated the ceiling that the Cavs have. But, he has definitely earned his right to see this season through its end. I am of the mindset. Go ahead.
I was going to say, especially after December 15th. I don't know if we hold on the way we did without him.
No, I mean, there were a lot of people at points during this season after the news was announced for Evan Mobley and Darius Garland going to be missing considerable portions of this season. There were a lot of people that wanted to punt on the season or thought the season was over and that we needed to can JB and start anew. And there was just a lot of takes flying around in regards to him, and they continue to do so. And it comes with the job, right? It's
Yeah.
one of those things. It's like being in content creation or anything else when you're a public figure. um, there are always going to be people that have an opinion about you, good or bad. And for JB, he has an opportunity to silence a lot of his critics through this singular postseason.
Yeah.
I guess my last question in regards to JB would probably be this. What do you think specifically it would take for the Cavs to feel like, hey, this is enough progression, this is enough of a move forward for us to retain JB? Is it a series victory? Is it 2? Is it a competitive second round series?
If you ask beat reporters, if you ask the organization, the answer they're saying is essentially that they have to get to the second round and it has to be competitive. It has to be very competitive. It has to it has to be giving conference finals potential now. That's the vibe. But honestly, if I'm going to be blunt, I think this comes down to Donovan Mitchell. I think everything on this team, how the roster is built, who stays on the coaching staff, the direction, the play style, the philosophy, the future, it all comes down to how he feels about the coaching situation. Donovan has been nothing but a class act about the Cavaliers. He's been nothing but a committed, and he's
Been a
been nothing but
professional. Yeah.
passionate and happy. He's been happy. So it's hard to say JB's driving him out. Donovan Mitchell, 2 years in a row, has been having the best years of his career. This is the first year he's actually this high up on the MVP ladder. He's doing that with JB. A roster with Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell is top 2 in the NBA in defense. Donovan Mitchell is actually a pretty solid defender this year. These are things that JB has I get some credit for. So you're right. It's going to come down to April. It may not be totally up to him. I think the Donovan Mitchell factor will be bigger. But here's the one thing I'll say, and one thing you can ask those haters on Twitter whenever they ask you this. I think you could say this. The same thing you asked about why don't they play Sam or Wade, or when they asked you about minutes, is like, well, what would you do differently? If you were the Cavs, who are you firing or replacing JB Bickerstaff with?
There is
Did
no
you
Ty Lue on the bench.
There's no
That's what I
Tyler.
want.
Did you want to get Udoka? Did you want to get Udoka? Because I think Udoka just wanted the keys to the team, and he wants to shape it the way he wants to shape it. And I don't know. Like, I just think there's not like there was not like an immediate option that made sense that was going to change the entire tide. And like, especially when you saw so many personnel deficiencies, just the lack of shooting, just the lack of experience. Like, I just think there was too many other factors outside of coaching that the organization was like, yeah, we need to see more, and we need to see it with JB a little bit more. So, I mean, it could be the wrong decision. It could all blow up in our face. We can get bounced again, and then it can all go wrong. But overall, I think the Cavs have handled it correctly.
I could not agree with you more. One of the guys who also the Cavs wanted to see a little bit more of is Isaac Okoro. Isaac is experiencing what I would consider a career year from him. He looks as confident as we've ever seen him. He dropped 17 points tonight, hit 3 more triples. You talked about it a little bit earlier on. There was a stretch where there was a ton of offensive rebounds, and he had like 3 or 4 shots in a row where they were very clean looks. Nobody was defending him. Should have knocked him down. But regardless, the shot is finally starting to fall from him. And the best part about it is that it's not even about the shot falling. It's about the confidence to take it, period. Because there have been points in the
Exactly.
past where you're like, dude, pull the trigger. You have the space. Don't try and attack the closeout all the time and get to the rim. Although we know you can do that. We know you can draw contact and get fouls. We've seen that happen. Although the refs seem to think that he doesn't deserve calls a lot of the time. Maybe that's just me being biased. But yeah, what are your thoughts on a potential Isaac Okoro extension? Where do you think his current value lies?
I saw a lot of people discussing this about how the Cavs maybe want to look to doing it now.
Mhm.
They can get him on something similar to Max Strus, and in the course of 3 to 4 years, it'd probably come off as like a good contract, especially if he keeps developing like this. Isaac Okoro, first year in the NBA, shooting under 30%. This year, he's at 40%. And honestly, the efficiency is cool. Last year, he had pretty good efficiency overall. The change is, you said it in the word confidence. I'm going to replace that word with the word volume. People know
Good.
that Isaac can hit 36+% of the threes. What they also know is that Isaac won't shoot them. That was the reality last year. This year, that's not the case. Isaac, without hesitation, is firing. That changes defenses. That's what matters. Today, there was a moment where the Knicks called him on the bluff, and he had a cold stretch. I don't remember the last time I saw Isaac Okoro miss 5 threes in a row. That's
It's been a
a
while
good
now.
thing. It's been a while. That's a good thing that we have the confidence in him to take that shot every time, and we can expect a different result. In terms of signing him, in terms of extending him, I think I give Kobe Allman a lot of credit. I think his development, his belief in him, as well as all these other young guys, Sam Merrill, Craig Porter, these guys who have developed and become like really, rotational players. I trust Kobe's instinct here where you really do have to see how it plays out. You have to see what Mitchell's, because what you do if you sign Mitchell and everything, that will determine a lot of your contracts. And if you need to bring in talent or what. So I think if you bring, if you give Isaac Okoro that 4 years, 60 something million thing, if you do that too early before you've seen in a new playoff series and everything, it might hamstring you in certain aspects. It might hamstring your other decisions that you have to make later. So even though you do risk though now having to pay him more later if it goes well for him. So but I think that's going to be the vibe here. I think the Cavs have to get to April. They have to see what this looks like.
I think that's fair, and I think a lot of people, especially coming off of that playoff showing that he had, and to be honest with you, I felt like Okoro should have played more in that series last year, and I know JB had a really, really, he had a short leash for
Yeah.
Isaac in that
Yeah.
series, and I to a degree, I understand it. Like, there were spacing concerns, obviously, with the two big lineup, not being able to provide you a whole hell of a lot in that regard, but I felt like from a defensive standpoint, Isaac probably should have played more. Now this
Yep.
year, coming in fully healthy, playing a hell of a lot more confident, I feel like Isaac is primed to have a great postseason showing, assuming that they actually give him minutes to be able to do so. And in that same line of thought, I will ask you this one last question before we close out here today. And that is, if the season ended today, my friend, who would be in your, let's say, 9-man playoff rotation?
Okay. Let's think about this. So, I mean, obviously, it seems like no matter what, we are rolling into things with double big. So it does looks like the lineup is set, all healthy. You're looking at Garland, Mitchell, Strus, Mobley, Allen. Staples off the bench. Karis LeVert, we know. I think at this point, you can expect the combination of Dean, Sam, and George. I don't see George completely being phased out. Unless when you get to a deep playoff run here and it's no longer a 9-man rotation, it's more of an 8-man rotation, then I think he gets phased out. In a 9-man rotation, I could see Niang continuing to be that 9th guy. I believe that's 8 or 9 right there, right? And then I guess you have the Tristan Thompson minutes when he comes back if you do need the size, if you do need to throw a different look at them. But yeah, I think that's the big challenge now is can you make Sam and Dean Wade kind of fit into everything? And do you have guys like George and Tristan and even Craig Porter at some moments that you can kind of throw in for a wild card? But that seems like that's going to be the go-to 8 to 9.
Yeah. Okay, I lied. I got one more for you.
Do it,
Do
do
you
it, do it.
like in a matchup like this? Because you brought the name up, Tristan Thompson, who is still serving his 25-game suspension. I believe he is eligible to return against the Houston Rockets on the 16th, if I'm not mistaken. How big of a role do you think he could play in a matchup like this?
For sure. And Tom K, thanks for correcting me. Okoro should also be in that 9-man ahead of Niang and Sam and all those guys. Tristan adds something that we just lack. There's a girth, there's a grit, there's a it's a taste of New York's medicine that we can throw right back at them.
That
I agree
physicality out
with
there.
I agree with you. The sentiment that like Okoro should have played more last year in the playoffs because the shooting was already bad enough. And one of the big reasons why we gave up so many offensive rebounds was because bigs just had to help a lot.
Yeah.
And if you
A
have
lot of
Okoro
blitzing on
a lot of
Brunson.
blitzing, and so if you have Okoro as the point of attack, you just limit some of that. And I think that needs to be that's what it should be like. I think we need to like use Tristan Thompson to neutralize a threat. If it's a rebounding threat, if it's a size threat, that's what you need to kind of throw at them. If it's like a guy like Brunson, if it's like a playmaking, penetrative player, then that's when you need to throw in Okoro. So I think I just want to see JB balance better his idea of what the ideal lineups is, and then understanding the personnel, the matchups, and putting in guys who will actually like counter what we're up against. Too often, I think we just kind of do the other when we should be doing, the other. So, yeah, I think that's going to be determining, just picking the right matchups. It's a good problem to have. Maybe it's not going to be always the same 8 or 9 people. It should depend on who we're facing. That's what the playoffs are about.
Yeah, styles make fights a lot of the time. I think that is a perfectly fine way to encapsulate that thought. And that's up to JB, right? If JB fails to do that in the postseason, he's gone. And
Yeah.
there are no ifs, ands, buts about it, to harken back to that topic. But man, I truly do appreciate you for coming on, Mr. _ Nikki G, ladies and gentlemen of Cavs Nation. Got anything you want to plug, man?
Nothing at all. This podcast is a staple for Cavs fans on Twitter. I'm excited to be on it. Cavs Nation is going to probably be promoting this podcast a lot more, so you guys should always be looking out for Mack on Twitter and looking out for this podcast on YouTube. Nothing to plug, man. Thanks for having me. I hope we get to talk more Cavs as the season goes. I'm still optimistic. I really am. I think I just treat this as our last rock bottom. I treat this as like a last like wake up call for us. I think we really need to these 20 games is an opportunity for us. It's an opportunity, some tough games, some growing pains. Like, this is a chance for us to find rhythm and really obsess about keeping it. I just hope we look forward here with some optimism, because there's a good opportunity here. There's something right here for us, as long as we just we keep paying attention to what's working, and we just keep investing into it.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I feel like, overall, tonight's loss sucked. There's no way around that shit. Tonight's loss absolutely sucked, but I can't let one regular season loss in a marathon of a season deter me from the fact that I feel like this team still has a pretty high ceiling. There were a lot of criticisms tonight, and some of them are justified. So I'm not going to battle people back and forth about how they feel in the moment, but I just encourage people, go back and rewatch the game. There are some things that you can glean and feel a little bit better about. Sam Merrill getting minutes, CPJ getting minutes. Those are positives, right? I mean, I got to look on the bright side. That's what I do. But I get why people are pissed off in a matchup like this, because I found myself very frustrated with the lack of effort at certain points tonight.
We wanted this one. We cared about this one.
We all did, man. Like I was saying before, like this, even though there were starters out on both sides prior, and then even after the jump started, with them losing Jalen, this meant something, and I'm sure it meant something to Knicks fans too. They won't tell you that, but they hate us just as much as we hate them at this point. This is a budding rivalry, in my opinion, and I can't wait until both teams are back at full strength. And I really, truly do hope these two teams meet in the playoffs. Of course, that is probably assuming both of these teams stay where they're at in the standings. It's going to take them meeting in the second round and beyond. So I really hope that's where we get to. That said, as I always tell you guys, if you'd like to reach out to me, you know how you can. It's Cavalier_pod on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and more. If you'd like to be added to the It's Cavalier Discord chat, you know what to do. Leave a rating, leave a review, send a screenshot of said review to itscavalier53@gmail.com, and I will send you an invite. I messed that up so much, man. I've been stringing them together, so it feels good to have a couple of shots go down like Sam Merrill did today. But that said, go Cavs. Have a good night.
Good night, guys.